Okay, Ludwig Wittgenstein, Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. It's one of the greatest ironies that the biggest name in British philosophy would be an Austrian whose teacher didn't really understand what he was saying. Bertrand Russell was his mentor, and there is so much irony to appreciating Wittgenstein. Richard Rorty, who really is the savior of philosophy, Western philosophy. I mean, he's not seen that way yet, but over time, he will be seen as someone who rescued philosophy from itself. And he said of Wittgenstein that he took out his self-loathing on everyone he met. Okay, he was in many ways quite the cliche as far as his personality goes. But he was always an intense, magnetic, brilliant individual. A cult of personality gathered around him. He satisfied all the cliches of the misunderstood genius and the romanticism about that. And the most hilarious thing about students of philosophy who think they're so science-minded and so no-nonsense is there's this secret lurking romantic in them, and they want to identify with someone who's, the second coming of Socrates or something. And Wittgenstein had a lot in common with Socrates, but then that makes us wonder how screwed up Socrates might have been. I will always prefer Aristotle to Platonic philosophy, because it's subject to verification. But that's neither here nor there. You got to read Wittgenstein if you're going to know philosophy. The Tractatus defines the parameters of logic, says it can only go so far, and then that's it. And beyond that, what can you say? That's absolutely certain. And then he kind of fudged on that. And typical of his extreme personality, he repudiated it because, if you see even a little tiny flaw in something, yeah, that's no good. I got to move on. And so he did a series of lectures that later got published posthumously as called Philosophical Investigations. I enjoyed reading it, but it came with a lot of disclaimers, and for it to be called, the most important work in 20th century philosophy is really just goes to show what's going on at Oxford and Cambridge, that they're as human as any of us, and that they just become enamored with personality. Okay, just like a bunch of teenagers who adore a rock star, and read about them obsessively in a magazine. The reality of Wittgenstein is he was incredibly honest in his thinking and incredibly self-critical in terms of his own reasoning. And he managed to steer the course of analytic philosophy toward language, and that came to such a dead end that it needed Richard Rorty to basically politely lambast it. Language is just something useful. Wittgenstein himself admitted to that. There are so many paradoxes to his thought and where people took his thought that, I can't say it all in a video. But I do want to say, in terms of neo-pragmatism and where I'm at, that it's only that kind of framework where anybody who's spiritual, who's got an academic background and who's read a lot of books and stuff, pragmatism or neo-pragmatism is the only framework by which you can reconcile a lot of thinkers who a smaller mind would say are unreconcilable. Okay, Jung in behaviorism, Nietzsche and William James, they can all come together if your approach is what is of practical benefit to a given proposition, and how does it square with competing propositions, and in whatever kind of paradigm you're trying to build. And without the pragmatic framework, it just all becomes dogma and sectarianism and an argument that can be reduced to a language game. And Wittgenstein's biggest contribution was, let's dissolve a lot of problems in philosophy rather than try to solve them, because you're just painting yourself into a corner with a lot of terms. And that's what Rorty embraces in Wittgenstein, and that's what the neo-pragmatist goes with in Wittgenstein.
Okay, history of costume from Egypt on up, and a lot of illustrations and photos in here if you're really interested in writing on historical subjects, historical stories, and, something for its own sake. Simone de Beauvoir, The Blood of Others, about the French Resistance, Virginia Woolf, Mrs. Dalloway, Dorothy Allison, Bastard out of Carolina, Catherine Mansfield, Bliss and Other Stories, Faulkner's Sanctuary. I've read a lot of Faulkner. My favorite Faulkner is Light in August, but I don't have a lot of Faulkner laying around here, but I've read a lot. Cognitive Behavior Therapy, a Restructuring Approach. I don't see how anyone could be interested in Gurdjieff and not read stuff like this. What's this? Irrational Emotive Therapy with Alcoholics and Substance Abusers. I am not I am not pre-addictive at all, and not even a little bit. I gave cigarettes up in a day, and my father was not pre-addictive either, because he'd been raised by a drunk. Those people raised by drunks have other problems than that they drink. They've got lots of other problems, but I've known people with this problem, so I wanted to have some insight into a strictly behavioral model for it. Religions of America: Baptist, Catholic, Christian, Scientist, Disciple of Christ, Episcopalian, Greek Orthodox, Jehovah's Witness, Jew, Lutheran, Methodist, Mormon, Presbyterian, Quaker, Seventh-day Adventist, Unchurched American, Unitarian Universalist, United Church of Christ, Agnostic, Religion of a Scientist. You name it, Leo Roston's got it. If I don't know your religious background firsthand, I was raised a Lutheran, but I can look it up. But you don't have that much to tell me about Catholicism or the Baptist thing, or. And then there's The Green Face by Gustav Meyrlink, who's most famous for the Golem. I can't find my copy of the Golem, but that's the main thing by Meyrlink. The English Patient. The other thing next to that, the Underworld is a video. I mean, it's the video. I watched that 1,000,000 times. I don't think I can ever watch it again, but I own a copy. The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein. Then some videos, Superman, that my nieces and nephew got together. It was a really thoughtful gift. I mean, it's not anything I watch a lot, but we watch superhero movies and stuff. So it was one of the more thoughtful gifts you get from kids, because they're not always that thoughtful when they get you something. Blade Runner, my favorite science fiction movie, that's there. Ernest Hemingway's You Can't See It, The Old Man in the Sea, Hemingway's For Whom the Bell Tolls. Then a horror anthology where I discovered Tanith Lee was the big discovery with that. Then a biography of Inessa Bell and Virginia Woolf. Very much respect Virginia Woolf as a stream of consciousness person and as a thinker, a voice. The Ripper Legacy by Martin Howell and Keith Skinner, very dated work on Ripperology. I'm a Ripperologist, a student of the Jack the Ripper murders. The Jack the Ripper A through Z, a standard work for people who study the Ripper. Virginia Woolf, To the Lighthouse, best thing she ever wrote. Secret Life of Bees, my sister gave me this, I never finished it. Tales and Techniques of a Voice Actor. Galsworthy's The Forsyte Saga. Very dated computer book. This kind of stuff is for work. One of 1,000,000 graphic novels that I have. More computer junk. You have to buy a new one every year. Screenwriting. And, of course, War and Peace. And then, let's see what do we get down here. Jack the Ripper of the Companion, but that really shouts out at you, by Stuart Skinner. I got into some problems with not with Skinner, with Stuart Evans. It's Keith Skinner and Stuart Evans. I got into some online weirdness with Evans. The less I say about that, the better. Let's see. Can any of this be seen? I got looking at the monitors behind me. Writing treatments that sell. There's nothing to writing to treatments. Just look up Wikipedia for anything that you've read, and if you read the summary, and if it's accurate, that's how you do a good synopsis of something. Robert Graves, The Greek Myths. Robert Graves went overboard, just like Gimbutas did with her thing on the goddess, but their intuition served them well enough. It's just that when they try to make their case factually, it kind of falls apart. They just go too far. The Never-Ending Story is probably, as kids' stories go, much more in keeping with what real self-development and consciousness in the craft are actually about than, Harry Potter. And The Naked Lunch by William S. Burroughs, make you vomit. McKay was a writer. Home to Harlem was a incredible book by a black man in the 20s. It's just, I don't know why he isn't more read than he is. And then Smoley, here, let's see, Smoley. A very skeptical work on Nostradamus, an essential Nostradamus. Smoley either is or was the editor for Gnosis magazine, and he really knows his stuff. I mean, he really knows it. Let's see what else. The Complete Short Stories of Ernest Hemingway. King Lear by Shakespeare, of course. Animal Farm. The Rebel by Camus. Kant. You're nowhere in philosophy until you can challenge Kant. Very important. Martin Heidegger, philosophy. Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. French Verbs, Torture. Oriental Mythology, Joe Campbell. And this is a collection of the original Spider-Man stuff. This is a graphic novel, and it alternates. Stan Lee's biography. I used to be a Marvel Comics fanatic. This is the Bhagavad Gita. This is Epictetus. I never pronounce these out loud, these names, these Greek names. Epictetus. I favor the Stoics in Greek philosophy. More graphic novels and related stuff. Open Secret, Rumi, a Sufi poet. Sure many of you know about Rumi. And more Spider-Man. As you can tell, I'm a fanatic about Spider-Man. I grew up, science fiction and horror magazines, struggling to learn French. My favorite experimental play, Marat Sade. There's a 1960s movie version of that. That's not too bad. Okay. But to see it on stage is whoa. Concise History of the Catholic Church. Norman Mailer's take on Harvey Oswald. The 9/11 Commission report. Let's see, wait. Blair. William Gibson, a neuromancer. I have not read every science fiction novel by him, or I've not read every science fiction novel of his generation, but of his generation that I have read, I would say he's the one who will be remembered. A lot of people, literature is really just what's remembered. That's the reality of literature. I don't think they call him literature yet. He is. Okay, a really crappy book on Nostradamus. Almost all books on Nostradamus are crap. Flash, boy. You gotta learn animation, folks, if you want to be part of the 21st century. So get this for yourselves, and you'll never regret it. It's not perfect. There's always mistakes in those books. Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman. He put everything he wrote in there, whether it was good or bad. Now, when Whitman is good, he's absolutely the best, and when he's not good, why did you do that? Why didn't you just burn it? My only big problem with Allen Ginsberg, I read a lot of Allen Ginsberg, is he just tried his whole life to be Walt Whitman, and it's just not how it is. You got to break away from your models, and I just don't think he ever truly did.